procedure.
Okay, we're ready. We're live.
Okay, I call the regular meeting of the Board of Education to order. Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Ansell.
Here.
Mrs. Duncan.
Here.
Mr. Gibson.
Here.
Mr. Morton.
Here.
Mr. Sewell.
Here. Next, we're going to have a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, our first order is have our superintendent's report. I'll turn it over to Mr. Calderon.
Okay. The first order of business is to offer some commendations on some congratulations and thank yous to some degree. Last spring, during the pandemic, we had a group at the school that had recommended to the Ohio School Boards Association a local business on what OSBA calls their business honor roll. So the RoboVikes nominated Quality Switch, and they'd like to recognize the support and give thanks to Quality Switch, which we all know is the family business of the Sewell family, starting with Horace Sewell, Mr. Sewell's father. And of course, Mr. Sewell is the CEO. So Mr. Slifka offers the following. The RoboVikes is an organization within LaBrae Local Schools that promotes STEM education, responsible use of technology, and affords our students the ability to hone their college and career readiness skills. Largely funded by collaborations with local business and individual donors, our after-school robotics program would like to recognize and give thanks to Quality Switch Incorporated. In light of the current global health crisis, this year's team is thriving with upwards of 35 students from grades 7 through 12. On behalf of the team, as well as teacher mentors Joe Slipka, Jonathan McNeamer, and Brenda Ferrone, the RoboVikes would like to recognize Mr. Russell Sewell, CEO of Quality Switch Incorporated, for the contributions and continued support of our program, for taking the time to mentor our students by way of guiding them through the engineering design process, troubleshooting projects, and helping them see individual components of the robot design as parts of a larger system. The team would also like to express their gratitude to Quality Switch Incorporated engineers John Delaney, Jonathan Gallo, and Dan Swartz. So in thankfulness and gratitude for their support, Mr. Swifka had the Ohio School Boards Association recognize Quality Switch on the business honor roll, and also wants to present Quality Switch with a plaque and a team photo to Mr. Sewell, which I'm sure will express their gratitude and will eventually hang in the halls of the Quality Switch front office. So I'll turn this over to Mr. Sewell at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
I appreciate it. And, we've worked the last couple of years with the RoboVikes, and I'm just pleased that we've got 3 engineers that volunteer their time to go in and help the students, give them some advice, guidance, and I think they have enjoyed as much as the students do. So it's a pleasure. I hope we can continue to keep going on. I know the pandemic's a little harder, but we'll do whatever we can to keep it going. So thank you.
We appreciate the support, and naturally, anytime we can bring in people from the field in any of our programs, and we've done that in a number of areas, it's great to have that kind of mentoring and that kind of insight from the professionals in the field. So a valuable partnership for sure. I also want to acknowledge and condemn our fall sports participants. Our student athletes are in the midst of wrapping up their fall season. We know that our golf team, recently lost in sectionals, so their season is done. But we did have great success as we were the league champs. Our first year in the Mahoning Valley Athletic Association, they won the Gray Division, so kudos to them on a strong season. Obviously, our football, soccer, and volleyball programs are wrapping up their seasons. Soccer and volleyball are finishing up a few games left in the regular season. Football, as you are aware, the playoffs have already started. We Congratulations to our coaches and players on a great first win, and now we head to Brookfield this Saturday for a rematch with the Brookfield Warriors. Quality game, quality opponent. It should be a dogfight. We look forward to that. But what's different about football this year is there's a potential to have regular season games still. So the way the Ohio High School Athletic Association designed the playoff format, school districts whose teams are make an early exit or win a couple games, and they still have a week or two before November 1st, they're allowed to schedule regular season contests. So we have some on the docket. Whether or not we play them is going to depend on how far we advance. So that's really the only sport that still has potential at regular season contests. As I said, soccer and volleyball are wrapping theirs up this week and a little bit next week, and then we're heading off to tournament play. So, and I'll have more information on that in a little bit. So as far as an update on things that are going on in the district regarding facilities and transportation, our bleacher seats are installed with the exception of 3. So if you take a peek in the gym tonight at the volleyball game, you will notice on the visitor side, right in the middle, there's a small little section. It's about 4 foot long. There are 3 seats missing. When that one end cap comes in, we will take 2 other seats, put the end cap in. Right now, it's not a hazard. It looks like one big giant step that allows people to step up into the bleachers and sit in a row right adjacent to it. But that's in. We've been using it for the last week and a half. And what's been beneficial about that is the social distancing that we've been able to achieve now when visiting teams come to compete in volleyball. As far as the telescopic seating at the auditorium or in the auditorium, last time I had updated you that we were going to have a technician out that week. He did show up. We were able to, with his assistance, get the bleachers pushed back in flush to the wall. So everything is returned to normal, but we do have some repairs that we're possibly going to have to make to those. We're awaiting. I know Mr. Cemento told me last week that we're awaiting a quote coming from Farnham, which is based in Columbus. So that's something that we'll likely pursue and use facility money to get that corrected. In the meantime, we don't really have large gatherings in there, so we don't have to worry about using that telescopic seating. As far as basket is concerned, we have the sliding window that is now installed in the office. I'll be quite honest with you, it's nice to have that complete, but I wasn't exactly satisfied with the quality of that sliding window. So as I look forward, possibly we might start looking at alternative designs. I didn't think that it was as solid as I would have liked it to have been. I think probably a vinyl slider would have been more solid than what was installed. But I obviously don't know what the ordering process was and how that was spec'd out other than the size dimensions that were listed in the plan. So that's something that we'll, review moving forward. Don't have a definite timetable on if and when. The other thing that we're waiting on is we have temporary locks on the doors in the office that all had new hardware. That hardware is in, but we don't have cores to them yet. That's the internal locking mechanism. Mr. Cemento will order those off of our vendor that we use for the complex to purchase those from Cleveland. And then once we have them keyed appropriately, we'll get them in and we'll install them in the interior doors to lock up that office space. The Hall of Fame enclosure is in. I don't know if any of you had a chance to see it. If you did not, please stop after the board meeting, take a walk down. We're not ready to really unveil that to the general public, if you will, because we're now waiting on that second phase, which is our signage on the wall. And stopped in on my way back today and picked up a sample of the color to test. We need to see if that will suffice for the 3-dimensional signage that will be on the wall that will say LaBrae Hall of Fame. And then the plaques that list the individual names of those that were inducted for the upcoming 2020 class, as well as the previous classes. Those are in production and design and production, and those should be done sometime, I would imagine, in the next week or 2. The 3-dimensional sign part with the color of red, the scarlet, that might take a little longer as we try to match that color up. But we anticipate that taking shape quickly. The enclosure turned out to be rather beautiful design, and I think it pops, and the content is a continual upload. So today I sent them some more information that we're sharing on a cloud drive, and they upload it, and every time they upload it, they republish it to the web or to our network. So we're excited every chance we can to update some of that current information. And one of the things that I've been doing, I'll get 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there, is make a few phone calls, try to contact some of the old inductees. Hey, could you send us a quality digital print? Do you have something in a JPEG or a PNG format that we can use for our digital display? And I let them know that it's gonna, once we're done and it's live, it'll be on our website where anybody remotely can go to LaBrae's website, and any content on that digital display that a person can see while they're at a game, like tonight's volleyball game or a basketball game, they'll be able to see on the web. So some of it's history, some of it's Hall of Fame, some of it's sports teams. We're working on getting all those records that are above the trophy cases in that old display case. All of those records have been shared with the company. They're working on getting that content loaded. And then what we want to do is talk to the Alumni Association, the Heritage Center, about, if there's any interest in taking that record board, if you will, because we really would not, it's a cumbersome thing that just sits up there. It weighs a ton. And the one time you had to take it down, it took, it's not a good situation to have manual movement. So I know it came over from the old building, it was kind of slapped up there on top of the trophy cases, but it's not the most optimal location for us. So as we move that into a digital landscape, thinking about seeing if the Heritage Association has any interest in that as part of LaBrae history. So, but all of those records will transfer over. And then last but not least, in the area of transportation, I connected with Myers Equipment late last week, and Myers informed me that we won't see that bus we purchased until after the first of the year. So there's really no chance of getting it sooner. That is again due to pandemic backlog of construction and supplies. So hopefully we'll see it as soon as possible after January 1st.
Was that the one that we paid, was funded mostly through the grant or whatever?
Yeah, that's the one where we got a little over 50,000 from the state grant, and we had to kick in the remaining part.
It's still holding up to the state grant? Still up?
No, the money's there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's been approved. We had a grant process that we had to submit some stuff to the state. They approved that, which means they then allocate the money. And I don't know how Mr. Panic does that other than draw down a request.
Yeah, I don't think, because I assume there's still an outstanding encumbrance. We didn't pay for it yet, right?
There is an outstanding
Yeah,
encumbrance. Yeah. So I think
But that's not on the.
you might actually have to cut the check before the state will actually transfer the money to our account, correct?
Yeah, I don't know, because probably, yeah, just like any federal grants cash request. But is it on the CCIP or is it not?
There is a separate link below the CCIP grant in the portal where it'll say transportation. That's where it is.
Oh, okay, I got
It's
you.
been allocated and
Okay.
approved.
I'll take a peek at that.
Yeah. But that is, I think the grant was around 53, and we
Yeah.
get about 35. And of course, kind of a no-brainer considering the cost sharing that the state of Ohio was putting forward. Okay, as far as students are concerned, I do want to make you aware that as part of the pandemic legislation that came out, there are graduation requirements that have been altered to account for the fact that there were no end-of-course exams administered last spring. And so remember, the end-of-course exams are situations where when a kid gets a certain score and is proficient, they earn quality points. You can even be below proficient and earn a quality point, but not enough that you could do that on all these tests and think you're going to graduate. You've got to hit some proficiency on some tests. So when you're not administering tests, there's no test for kids to earn quality points on. So what the state of Ohio has said is that a student, if they pass a course, can use the course passing grade as evidence of proficiency and apply it to quality points. So I'm not sure on the correlation how that works in terms of how many quality points you get for a C, a B, or an A, or if a D will get you any. But the key is a student is allowed to go back all the way to their freshman year to get those quality points. So for example, let's say as a freshman, let's say you took the end of course exam as a sophomore and you could not get a proficient score, but you got a B in Algebra 1 in 9th grade, you can go back and use that B and use the quality points according to the state's guidelines and now count that B towards your quality points towards graduation. So Ohio is allowing students to go back through their freshman year to take course passage grades and use them towards graduation under this. Now, that's not going to be there forever, but that's there to help our juniors and seniors who are, should have had the administration of end of course exams last year. Now, some people might say, well, why not just take the end of course exams coming up? Well, how many might that be? Each individual case, you might not be able to properly administer enough tests for a student that might have to take a test this year and also have to go back and take maybe 3 end of course exams from the previous year. So it creates some much needed flexibility. And of course, as far as testing is concerned this year, I know there's a push in the state of Ohio to not have testing. I don't necessarily know if that's going to happen. My conventional or wisdom or educated guess based on past practice would be that we'll still have the test, but I think we might see some relaxing in the accountability. The state might take away the high stakes decision making that goes along with the test. And this is one example where it's high stakes for kids individually. That would be relaxed versus holding them accountable and requiring the test administration in certain grades, because there are going to be some learning gaps guaranteed from last spring through the course of this year. Another item to update you on is the virtual learning program. And this is one of those situations. I emailed our parents today to give them a couple updates. I copied you as board members on that because I wanted you to see what our parents were being told. I had emailed parents previously, maybe a week ago or maybe about 10 days ago, and apologized for the situation we were in with regards to K-5, because we have a couple grade levels that have not received their print materials, and then we have some sporadic missing print materials in the other grade levels. And all of last week, you get 10 or 15 boxes that trickle in. They get to the ESC checks them in, they bring them right out. The ESC has made it a priority to deliver them immediately. They don't sit on them. And so today's email that I was going to send to parents actually included a survey link, because my original typed draft was to ask our parents, tell me what materials you have not received, because as much complaining and as much drum pounding that we've done with the ESC and they've done with Fuel Ed, there's only so much you can do, because they're not the squeaky wheel getting the grease is not working in this case, because they're backlogged across the nation. Now, mind you, this company is called K-12. They're the ones that own, private company that owns Fuel Ed. And we wanted to kind of survey where our parents were. Luckily, as I was drafting that email, I got an email from the ESC that said they had 140 boxes arrived today. And a preponderance of those boxes were LaBrae boxes, and that they would have them out to us tomorrow. So I changed my draft to let our parents know that we have a lot of boxes arriving. We're going to get them here tomorrow. We think we'll be able to have them for you on Wednesday. But this has not been a perfect scenario by any stretch of the imagination. We would have loved nothing more than to have these ready in August, or at least by mid-September, but it has not worked out that way. So we're hoping to move forward and do our best to make the best of a bad situation. And I know as I've communicated with some parents today in email and previously, there's no explanation for the frustration other than complete failure to be able to get in the materials that these parents are experiencing. And we understand that. Regretfully, we wish we could change it, but we can't. It is what it is at this point, and we have to continue to pound Fuel Ed with phone calls to say, hey, do we have shipping information? Do we have tracking information? When can you get us that information? Because we just want to know that it's coming. So tomorrow we'll see the progress we make when those get dropped off. But again, publicly, I do want to apologize to our families on behalf of the board and the LaBrae community. We wish it would have been different, but we're going to try to do our best to continue to get those materials in and get them to our families as quick as possible. And then last, in the area of students and academics, on September 30th, our literacy committee met after school at the intermediate building. This was a team of basket teachers, intermediate teachers, Mrs. Suzelis, the intermediate principal, Mrs. Kowach, the basket principal, myself, and Angela Guarneri, the literacy guide or director of the C&I department of the ESC. And Mrs. Duncan was able to make it in attendance as a board rep. Mrs. Ansell had prior commitments. So the goal there was to look at the literacy plan that we had initiated last spring and look at how we're moving forward. And so I would share this, that one of the key points of emphasis that Mrs. Guarneri stressed was, in order to go fast, we have to first go slow. And so this year, there is not going to be an implementation of a lot of new things. In fact, over the last 2 years, we've tried to implement some new things. And here's one of those things that our teachers have said are pretty important: phonics instruction. And so over the last 2 years, seeing the quality coming out of the literacy skills coming out of our Bascom preschool programs, there was an interest and an inquiry with our Bascom preschool teachers by the administration and other teachers to say, what are you doing with these preschool kids that they're coming out far advanced compared to last year's? And that's where they introduced us to what they were doing, and we started getting some training for our teachers called Heggerty training. And Heggerty is phonemic awareness and phonics, and basically it's a phonics instruction program. And there's consensus among K-4, K-5 staff that if there's one thing that we're not giving our kids that we might need to refocus on, it's phonics instruction. And that goes back to that age-old debate about whole word instruction versus phonics instruction. That's a debate that has been around for generations and never seems to go out of style. So what our teachers are stressing is that we need to revisit that. And so that was part of our Heggerty training and our refocus on getting phonemic awareness and phonics instruction into our lowest levels. Because we were seeing the success that they were having in the preschool units that we host through the ESC. So, for example, and how do we get to this point? Here's what Mrs. Guarneri is saying. Are we doing Heggerty with fidelity? So that's what she means by saying that's what we're going to do when we go slow to go fast. We might take most of this year to go into every classroom and observe the use of Heggerty training to see, are we implementing it with fidelity? Because if we try to implement too many things too fast and not try to perfect the one thing that we are doing or the one new thing that we've done over the last 2 years, that we might not be closing those gaps, and we might be more focused on implementing new things rather than perfecting what we're doing. So that was a general synopsis, if you will, on some of the more salient, finer points of what came out of that literacy committee meeting. The other final thing would be a need to do some additional professional development on the science of reading. Some of the professional development pushed through the Ohio Department of Education and our literacy initiatives. Now, unfortunately, this would have been all part of the literacy grant that we applied for last year through the ESC, but that didn't happen. The state did not award that grant to the ESC. So this is information that we are going to try to provide to our staff through professional development in partnership with the ESC on our own. The good news is one of the things that Mrs. Guarneri said as a veteran literacy instructor, title instructor in another Trumbull County district before she moved to the ESC, is she said that she has been exposed to so much training and so many resources that her curriculum for literacy instruction is not driven by a reading series. It's not driven by a book. It's not driven by one particular set of resources to say, I've got to have this in order to get students proper literacy instruction. In fact, her message to our teachers basically was, if I was to walk into a classroom and teach literacy, I don't need a reading series. I've got enough resources throughout my career, what I've been exposed to and trained on, that I could cobble all that together. So she wanted to lay the foundation that it's about, you don't need resources. In fact, some of our teachers spoke up in a meeting and said, we've got plenty. We've got, if I recall correctly, one teacher said, we've got resources out the wazoo. Okay, so, you know, what we got to do is try to find out how those resources fit together like a jigsaw puzzle so that we're not necessarily investing more money into resources that we might not need. And that'll be a long, painstaking process to evaluate any additional resources that we might have to meet. So at that point, if anybody has any questions, I'd gladly field those, but I would also give an opportunity to Mrs. Duncan that if she wanted to offer additional comments on that meeting, she may.
Honestly, I think stepping into this, they had met 3 times previously, once in April and 2 in May. Stepping into it in September, I had some ideas, and I was really glad that the staff was willing to share any concerns or frustrations or, how are we doing this? And Angela, who spoke as the leader along with Maggie and Kay, said, we will do this slowly. You don't want to just jump into something. If you take your time and do it carefully and slowly and deliberately, this is a data-driven program, and the data is going to come from students at LaBrae. So that's going to help guide it, and it made a lot of sense, and if something isn't working for you, then you've got to find something that's going to work for the students. So that's really, I think we're in a good direction. We're just going to have to give it time and be patient and one step at a time. So I think it's a good idea. I really do. We'll see how it goes.
Is this focused in on one set of grade level, or is it K through?
It actually goes K to 12, but what they're going to focus on for now is K to 5.
Okay.
So you're kind of, looking at that level of accomplishment, and it's the truth. You got to start off giving them a great foundation. That's really going to help. You can build on that. So I think it's a direction that we need. Okay?
Thank you very much. Okay, so in the area of finances, Mr. Panic is finalizing our 5-year forecast, and I've updated you on that in terms of how we might move forward with presenting it to the board and having some discussion. And then when Mr. Sewell stopped in last week to do some signing of some paperwork and cards, he and I had a conversation. We thought we might be better served scheduling a work session where all board members could be together. Rather than try to piecemeal that and keep the numbers small, we might look at early November, like that first week after that November 3rd Tuesday date. We might try to schedule something in the afternoon in Lab 101 or 121 where we can broadcast it on the projector, give you guys the printouts of the forecast, and then Mr. Panic can present the forecast, and we can have some discussion around the narratives and the numbers and mapping our move forward. So what I would do is maybe email the board some potential dates here, this week, and then you guys can reply back and we can have some consensus on a date. We have a November 16th board meeting, so we've got a little extra time there because we're not on the second Monday due to what used to be the Capitol Conference, but that's all going to be virtual, so we don't have to worry about kicking it back.
So it's the second Monday then?
No, we're still going to do it on the 16th.
That is the second Monday though, right?
No.
Yes.
The first Monday is the second Monday is the 9th. So
nice.
the 16th is the third.
A lot of extra time.
Yeah. So we're going to be able to firm that up and be able to present some numbers to you that we'll have all the way through October.
Yeah, my thought was when I talked to AJ was to, because, Brad's kind of new, we're still getting to know each other, how his thought process is. Instead of just going to the financial committee, I would rather open it up for the whole board. That way, we don't bombard him at a meeting. We have a work session. Everybody can ask anything. We can get it done. And then at the board meeting, something comes up after that, then we can have most of the business part out of the way. And where he's coming from. He knows where we're coming from. So I want to give us kind of both an opportunity to get into it rather than just two of us.
Okay. As far as personnel is concerned, we are working on scheduling. Mr. Panic and Mr. McQuaid and I need to firm up a date. I reached out to Matthews. We want to have a date where we can get together to evaluate the shared service arrangement. We had put that in the contract, and we would have periodic reviews. And so I'm going to reach out to Mr. McQuaid again this week and try to pin down a date where we might
You'll
be
probably
able to
want to
get
wait
together.
till after the,
5 years.
after the board meeting of this month.
Oh yeah, it's not. I wouldn't say it's going to happen anytime in the next 10 days.
Could be the last week of
October.
October, yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll try to pin that up, firm it up, and then the other thing I want to do in that front is I want to sit down with Mr. Panic and his people in his department, Mrs. Diorio and Miss Best, and we want to have a conversation about processes and communication and kind of see how's it working internally. So there's the external relationship between the two entities, but there's also the internal piece. So those are the things that, from a personnel standpoint, we're going to try to get done within the next month so that we can, evaluate the progress in the first 3 months.
Yeah,
And then,
I'd
go ahead,
like to
I'm
add
sorry.
something.
Yep, please do.
I would encourage any of the board members want to, stop in the days that Brad's there, talk to him, but also talk to Debbie and Olga and get their kind of feel. And, they may be more open to suggesting just go one-on-one. That's what I did. I stopped to talk to Brad one day, and then the other day after meeting with AJ, I went in and talked to the other, just get an idea how everything's going to see, where can we help, I guess, as a board? How can we help drive it? Get some feeling if they have some concerns. We want to make sure this transition works, so we need everybody to be honest and give their opinions. So, I would encourage stop in and just talk to them directly.
Yeah, I think if you guys don't know my schedule by now, it's Monday and Thursday are the days I'm most likely to be here.
Right.
Now we're doing this the training for Matthews with the USAS redesign, and that might throw some days off because I think I'm going there this Thursday to train.
And that is basically the new state software.
Yes.
They're finally upgrading it. So, and Matthews is one of the first districts, as well as the ESC, to get to do that training. So, okay. And then a few miscellaneous things. One, I want to encourage the board members to access our strategic plan, which is in the Google Drive, or it's also online on our website, and you can start to review that. And if you think there's some updates we can make to that, we can do some deletions, we can do some additions, revisions as necessary, and we can maybe target an approval of January of an amended strategic plan. So, and then some upcoming dates just to make you aware of. We got our October 17th, which is Saturday. We're at Brookfield, as I said earlier, 7 o'clock. On the 19th next week, on what would that be, Monday, the girls soccer team will host Newton Falls at 6 o'clock in their first tournament game. On the 21st, volleyball will be hosting Mooney at home at 6 o'clock. On the 24th, our boys soccer team will go up against Ursuline, and that will be at YSU at 4 o'clock, right across the street from Stanbaugh Stadium. I think YSU has a soccer field, or soccer stadium there that's a couple years old, so it'll be a great venue for afternoon soccer. And then our next board meeting is the 16th, and in between then we'll get that work session scheduled. So that's all I have for the board and the community. If anybody has any questions, we're glad to field them.
Any questions? Okay, we'll move into public participation. Again, as you notice, we're at a Zoom meeting. We're still not allowed to have public gatherings, so we continue to abide by the county health commissioner's rules. We don't like it, but we got to do it. So, anything, Mr. Calderon?
Yeah, I would, well, at this point, we have no questions, so we'll probably move on without anything coming from the public in the chat. But I would add that at this point, based on what I'm seeing, if I recall correctly, the legislation that was passed back in the spring that allowed for quote-unquote non-public meetings, that ends in December.
Yeah.
So December will be our last meeting unless the legislature, you never know what's going to happen in a lame duck session. The election's on the 3rd, and there could be a lot. Right now nothing's going to happen because the legislature they're back campaigning. Okay, but there's some things that could happen in a lame duck session that get tagged into some other bills. Now we all know the political hot button issues, that House Bill 6 and repealing that first energy issue. So who knows what could get Christmas treed onto that bill, as well as they're going to try to address the school funding bill and some other items could appear. So, but as of right now, the December meeting would look to be the last one until the legislature does something differently.
So that's Ohio legislature.
That's the General Assembly, the Ohio legislature.
If there's no, if they don't extend that or pass a new bill, you could then very well have Ohio State football get the full capacity then, right?
I don't know the depths of what that piece of legislation did. I think the director's orders are where the limits on assembly are. I think the legislature is the one that said public entities like villages, city councils, school
No more
boards,
than 10 right now.
they do not have to have public meetings and they
Okay,
have
all right.
the 10 limit. So that's what I think is the difference. So I think the director's order would have to be lifted before there would be any assembly.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, now we'll move into our regular agenda items, and I'll turn it back over to Mr. Colfer.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is a recommendation that the board approve the minutes from our last meeting on September 14th, 2020.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mrs. Ansell, second by Mrs. Duncan. Any discussion? Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Ansell?
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Mr. Sewell?
Yes, motion carries 5-0.
Next item on the agenda is a recommendation that the Board of Education approve the September financial report as presented by the treasurer.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Gibson, second by Mrs. Ansell. Any discussion? Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Mrs. Ansell?
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Sewell?
Yes, motion carries 5-0.
Next item on the agenda is a recommendation that the Board of Education authorize the treasurer to enter into an agreement with Huntington National Bank to secure purchasing cards for the procurement of goods and services for LaBrae Local Schools in accordance with appropriated funds in the annual appropriations budget.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Gibson, second by Mrs. Duncan. Any questions?
This is really just to replace the Sam's Visa card with and it says card, we're only gonna get one card with a, basically a Huntington credit card kind of. And, they're purchasing cards, so they're, you're supposed to spend a certain amount, but Huntington kind of said, just do whatever. with no fees or nothing.
But this will be just only for authorized personnel
Oh, yeah,
and out of the appropriations, so we've already approved the budget. This is
Right.
just
Yeah.
for the card.
Correct.
Mhm.
They'll be within the budgeted amounts. We have a policy that, for example, sets our procurement of credit card limit at 25,000. We've never, ever
No.
approached that. And because when we had the transition, we had some problems with Sam's
Yeah.
Club.
yeah,
And Mr. Panic eventually got Sam's Club, which was our credit card. We would use it at Walmart,
Amazon.
Amazon. If we needed to purchase supplies on Amazon, the credit card was used. And so Sam's Club issued a new card, but they issued a new purchasing card, which is only good at Sam's
And
and
Walmart,
Walmart.
yeah.
So we had to have another way. So Mr. Panic did some work with Huntington to see if they could help us solve the issue. And while we have a Lowe's account and we have a Menards account, if we need, hardware, supplies, things like that, but we don't have that ability to, hey, we need, to spend $500 on PPE for the clinic, but the best prices are on Amazon.
Yeah, that's probably 80% of the purchases will be on Amazon or Amazon.
Okay. Other questions? All right, Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. Morton,
Yes.
Mrs. Ansell,
Yes.
Mr. Sewell.
Yes, motion carries 5-0.
Next item on the agenda is a recommendation that the Board of Education accept the resignation letter for retirement purposes from Deborah Blazik with the last date of employment of May 28th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Duncan, second by Mr. Morton. Any discussion? Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. Morton,
Yes.
Mrs. Ansell,
Yes.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes.
Mr. Sewell.
Yes, motion carries 5-0.
Next item on the agenda is a recommendation that the Board of Education accept the resignation letter for retirement purposes of Susan Roan with the last date of employment of May 28th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Morton, second by Mrs. Duncan. Any discussion?
Is that before the last day of school, or is that the last day of?
It's the last day. It would be their last day. That's a Friday. It's the last teacher day. Might be-
Oh, is it? Okay,
Might be a
okay.
Thursday.
All right, good.
Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mr. Morton,
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes.
Mrs. Ansell,
Yes.
Mr. Sewell.
Yes, motion carries 5-0.
Next item on the agenda is a recommendation that the Board of Education accept the resignation letter for retirement purposes from Edward Steigerwald with the last date of employment of May 31st, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Ansell, second by Mrs. Duncan. Any discussion?
Is there a reason his is 3 days later?
No, those are the dates that they chose to use in their letter. And rather than have him go back and redo his letter, I just chose the dates that were in there. The only key is as long as he's not employed by us on June 1st, he can still get a retirement check.
Right, yeah.
So he could have chose the 28th as well. And that's a good question. I'm glad you bring it up, just so you understand the nuance. A teacher could retire on May 28th. That's the last teacher day. They could get hurt and have to go to the emergency room on Friday, the 29th. They're still covered by our insurance because everybody has paid the bill through May.
Yeah.
So they will have a couple days of insurance. Sometimes people just choose the last day of the month. So.
Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Ansell,
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes.
Mr. Morton,
Yes.
Mr. Sewell.
Yes, motion carries 5-0.
And, naturally, we want to commend all three of these individuals for their, commitment and service to LaBrae kids for, their time that they've been at LaBrae. Mrs. Blazik and Mr. Steigerwald are LaBrae Vikings. They graduated from LaBrae and have family deep in the community. I know many of you know that. And then, of course, Mrs. Rome came to us on an alternative career path from the private sector and came into education. And, we'll get a time later on, hopefully in the spring, to properly honor our retirees like we have done in the past when maybe we're on the back side of this. But, we commend them for their service. We naturally wish them a strong finish this school year, and we'll be talking to them more as the year goes forward to properly honor them. The next item on the agenda is a recommendation that the Board of Education approve the following individual who is being recommended for an academic supplemental contract effective with the 2021 school year and conditioned upon the continuation of the activity as determined by the orders issued by the Director of the Ohio Department of Health or the Governor of the State of Ohio, and to be paid on a pro rata basis in accord with any issuance of said order. And that is Mr. Slifka, Joe Slifka, who is the advisor for the RoboBikes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Ansell, second by Mr. Morton. Any questions?
We delayed this. We weren't quite sure what was going to happen with the competitions. And then I did confirm last week with Mr. Slifka that the competitions are going to be virtual. So there will be robotics competitions, but they will be virtual and not in person. So we thank him for being willing to continue that effort and support our kids in STEM education.
Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Ansell,
Yes.
Mr. Morton,
Yes.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan,
Yes.
Mrs. Sewell.
Yes, motion carries 5-0.
Next item on the agenda is a recommendation the Board of Education approve the first reading of the following board bylaws and policy additions, revisions, and rescissions. So you see we have 40 policies in there. We have a number of revised policies, and then we are rescinding one policy. A lot of that is because the federal government has, generally the Civil Rights Commission through their executive authorities and legislative edicts, have issued new guidance and new policies on discrimination. So policy 2266 is a non-discrimination policy based on the basis of sex in district programs or activities. And so myself, Mr. Rowe, Mrs. Kowach, and Mr. Starkey, our compliance coordinators, underwent some refresher training a couple weeks ago for 3 hours, 3.5 hours on Title IX compliance. And that policy will replace the sexual violence policy, which is 5517.02. So, as I told you in a memo, I planned a meeting with our attorneys, and I gave them a draft policy, and they came back. We met last Thursday via Zoom, and we crafted up some edits. And one of the things that they recommended, and I think I know the pulse of the board on this, but one of the things that they recommended in the policy is that if you happen to look at it, possible punishments for staff members who violate this policy, there was a list there. And this is kind of a could be this, it could be that. Well, one of the policies options said suspension with pay. Now, I had taken it out of the original draft because I didn't think that it's in our interest to have that. I didn't think that there would be support you're gonna have someone who's gonna violate a non-discrimination policy based on sex or gender, and we're gonna suspend them with pay, that usually goes against conventional thinking. So I took that out. The lawyer said, oh, no, we really think you should put that back in. We're not opposed if you take it out again, but really, you probably should consider what your board wants. And I was confident. Now, I will say this, if you want that in there, then by all means, we can put it back in. But their rationale is this. Sometimes collective bargaining agreements, especially in much bigger districts that might have 15, 20,000 kids and 400 staff members, they might have such prescriptive negotiated clauses on punishment that you might need it in there to work around that. Our collective bargaining agreement doesn't have that kind of stuff. It does not have prescriptive, if this happens, you do this first, and then you move up these graduated steps. So in the absence of that, if someone would violate this policy, I really do not think suspension with pay was any form of punishment that this board would stomach, and so therefore I took it out. You let me know if it's different. If it is, we can make a simple edit to this resolution, but that was a big part of the discussion we had over the draft that I had submitted to our legal counsel. And then we'll come back. Again, here's the other thing. If you, 2 days from now, think you want to change something, that's the reason we do a second reading, so we can come back upon further thought and reflection and question the things that are in these. But as you know, a lot of these revisions are driven by changes in state and federal law, and then they're vetted by the Enos and Britton law firm that is contracted with Neola to craft these policies.
Any motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Duncan, second by Mrs. Ansell. Any discussion? Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Duncan,
Yes.
Mrs. Ansell,
Yes.
Mr. Morton,
Yes.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes.
Mr. Tool.
Yes, motion carries 5-0.
Okay, the last item on the agenda is a recommendation that the Board of Education acknowledge and accept the following donations. And we want to acknowledge Jenny Kennedy and Project Making Kids Count for their continued vast support of LaBrae children. Mrs. Kennedy and her foundation, Project Making Kids Count, have been a big, can I say, huge benefactor, and our kids have been the beneficiary. And so every year she's always dropping off clothes, whether it's shoes, fresh underwear, socks, coats, you name it. So this year we want to acknowledge the fact that at the start of the year, she dropped off 12 pairs of shoes, 24 pairs of sweatpants, 24 pairs of socks, 12 binders, and miscellaneous prizes that the building can use to reward good behavior. So we thank her for her continued support, and we hope we can continue to count on her moving forward. And so we want to acknowledge her generosity.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Ansell, second by Mr. Morton. Any discussion? And we appreciate anything that benefits our students. And he said this has been a big godsend for our community and do a lot for us. We appreciate every bit of it. Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Ansell,
Yes.
Mr. Morton,
Yes.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. Sewell.
Yes, motion carries 5-0. Anything under miscellaneous? Brad, do you have anything?
No, not.
Okay. Concerns of the board, I'll start with Mr. Gibson. You have anything you want to add?
No, nothing at this time.
Okay. Mr. Morton?
Nope.
Mrs. Duncan?
I think it's exciting that the RoboVikes group is growing, and Mr. Slivka seems to be very pleased also, so that's a wonderful thing.
Well, I might have donations to put on for next meeting. I think, are they getting some donations for the RoboBikes program? 'Cause I've definitely received it. It's like $100 receipts.
Okay.
So I think they're donations.
Yeah, he generally gets some.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I would add, I failed to inform the board of this, but we had purchased, Mr. Slivka this summer did some negotiating on price breaks for the drone. And I don't know if you followed some of our social media posts that he's put out there, but we did purchase a drone for the classroom, and much the same way that you can do some coding and commanding with the software that runs that drone. It gives students an opportunity to explore a different level of technology. So So just to add on to that. So.
Thank you. Mrs. Ansel?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Again, I appreciate the notification from RoboBikes. It's a lot of fun. Just a reminder, you don't have to be an engineer to do it. I have 3 engineers from our company that go in there, but I go in too, and I just like working with the kids and try to help them in different ways. So, they're open for suggestions, and they really come up with some good ideas. So I encourage anybody to try to meet with any of the clubs. If you've got a good idea, you can mentorship. RoboBikes aren't the only ones. They're just kind of one I picked because we do a lot of engineering at our company, so it kind of fit. There's opportunities out there for anybody. Again, just remind everybody, we as a board, I don't think we like the situation we're in, but we're dealing with it the best we can. I know I've talked to a few parents that have emailed me since we did put our emails out there, and I kept saying they were there. And I could tell them, a lot of them are just frustrated the way it is. They didn't, when they signed up for, the remote, they weren't sure what it was, and I know some of them aren't happy. They're having some trouble. I know Mr. Calderon's taking some of his personal time to work with them, and they do appreciate that. But, it is frustrating for them that can't get it, and not having the equipment or the materials makes it, just an add-on. And we're not the only ones. I mean, Polk County, we're all kind of suffering because we're not getting the information. So it's kind of putting our students behind. We're working as hard as we can to get it, and I encourage you, if you're having issues, remote or not remote, contact your teacher. If you're having trouble here, contact them first. The county, if you're having trouble with the fuel area, that they have, their webpage, their contact support, contact them. Don't be lost and don't give up. I know it's very frustrating, but we're going to try to get through this together, and hopefully we can get through this COVID, the rough part. Maybe we can get back to normal sometime next year. That's what we're all praying for. So just keep trying, stay with us. I guess all we can do is now we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Ansel, second by Mrs. Duncan. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Okay, so this concludes the October 12th, 2020 meeting of the LaBrae Board of Education at LaBrae Local Schools.
That's the person card resolution that's.
I'm not,
You and Diane to sign.
debates tonight.